A few weeks ago, Pope Francis sent out a letter where he mentioned that instances of racism continue to shame us. And there are many well springs of sources for the Catholic Church's teachings on human dignity and on racism in particular. I'd like to touch on just a couple of them tonight. One of them requires us to go back to where we just were with Rabbi Beth, to the book of Genesis. The very first chapter of the book of Genesis, the overture to the symphony, which is the corpus of the scriptures. We learn in that first chapter that God made human beings in God's own image and likeness. And that means that every human being is a child of God. And not just brothers and sisters, but image bearers, people who bear God's image. And so in the eyes of the Catholic Church, this gives every human being an immense dignity that can never be diminished. It can never be taken away. Pope John Paul II once applied that verse of Genesis in a very succinct statement on racism. He said, racism is a negation of the deepest identity of the human being, who is a person created in the image and likeness of God. Now, for Christians, another source, in fact, the central source, is the cross of Jesus Christ. For us who believe that Jesus died for the salvation of the world, the cross is the ultimate sign of God's love. The cross is an omnipresent symbol for us, and it's a constant challenge when we look upon a cross, because it says to us that this is how much God loves you. And if God loves us to this limitless degree, then how in the world can we who profess to be followers of Jesus afford a lesser value to another person? We consider themselves to be something less of a lesser value just because of the color of their skin. There could be nothing that would be more contrary to the gospel. And so the cross compels us to see other people the way that God sees them and not the way that we see them. And this is why the church considers racism to be a grave evil. And the U.S. bishops have made it clear that they consider acts of racism to be nothing less than offenses against life itself. So what are we called to do as Catholics? And I realize we're not all Catholic on here, and I'm just going to throw a few things out based on what the church teaches, and hopefully these observations are things that everyone can draw from. We could be spending months on this issue. In 2018, the U.S. Catholic bishops issued a pastoral letter on racism, which is called Open Wide Our Hearts. And in that letter, the bishop said something that really resonates with me as a Catholic in New Hampshire. They said, we need to engage the world and encounter others to see, maybe for the first time, those who are on the peripheries of our own limited view. Now, the reason that resonates is because the demographics of our Catholic parishes are the demographics of our state. In the majority of our Catholic parishes in New Hampshire, it is likely the case that few, if any, in some cases, people have suffered in any way on account of the color of their skin. And this means that we have to broaden our perspectives and broaden our horizons and listen carefully to what our brothers and sisters are saying. As the bishops say in that same letter, love requires us not to be dismissive of the experiences of other people. Anyone who's on here that's married can attest to the truth of that statement. The other thing that we need to think about is the church's teaching that sin has both an individual and a social dimension. The Catechism of the Catholic Church speaks of how the sins of individuals can create structures of sin, as the Catechism calls them, at an institutional level. Now, I suspect that for all of us, when we are examining our own consciences, and as we do in the Catholic Mass, at the very beginning, we ask for forgiveness for what we have done and what we have failed to do. And when we think about that, if you're like me, I suspect that you spend your time thinking about how your relationships with other people have fallen short. And we spend little, if any, time thinking about those social structures, how our own sins can grow into other things. But here again, we need to broaden our horizon and broaden our perspectives to see that the need to repair the breach, to put things right, extends beyond just our individual relationships and into the broader structures of society. And I'll close with something that Pope Francis said when he addressed a joint session of Congress in 2015. The effects of unjust structures and actions are all too apparent. Our efforts must aim at restoring hope, righting wrongs, maintaining commitments, and thus promoting the well-being of all people.